Hello, my name is Susannah Verney. I am the current Director of the Master's degree in Southeast European Studies, Politics, History and Economics at the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. I am very pleased to have here with me today Professor Jovan Teokarevic of the University of Belgrade. Welcome, Professor Teokarevic.
Thank you, nice to be here again.
And we're very pleased to have you. So I would like to talk to you today about the impact of Russia's aggression against Ukraine on Serbia, and more specifically on Serbia's relations with the European Union. So Serbia already, before this war broke out, had low alignment with the European Union foreign policy acquis, even though it's a candidate for membership and has actually been negotiating its membership since 2014. And since the outbreak of the war, it has not aligned with EU sanctions against Serbia. So at the same time, we see there's a lot of ambivalence in Serbian society towards the EU. The latest Eurobarometer survey, conducted in May to June of 2023, suggested that 31% of Serbian people are in favour of EU membership, whereas 32% are against and 36% are neither in favour nor against. They just don't know. I wondered how this ambivalence impacts on this foreign policy non-alignment. Is it the cause or is it the effect?
Serbia is a very polarized society. This is not an exception. Actually, many societies today are that way. And the Russian factor actually cuts through the middle of the society, which is at the same time the EU factor. So actually these two strategic goals, whether to go towards the EU or towards Russia, they are actually dividing Serbian society. As you said, the accession negotiations have lasted for 9 years now. They have been extremely unsuccessful. Serbia has been able to open only 21 out of 35 chapters in negotiations, unlike Montenegro, for example, from the same group of Western Balkan countries that has opened all negotiating chapters. Now, the Russian factor is, if I can say so, a self-inflicted injury. So Russia actually has no strategy towards the Western Balkans, other than not allowing or trying not to allow NATO to further enlarge through the Western Balkans. So there are only two states left out of NATO, Serbia and Bosnia. Bosnia because of the Serbian factor in Bosnia. And Serbia's government pro-Russian policy is actually a policy that is intended to keep control of the nationalist half of Serbia's society, the half that is at the same time pro-Russian. That is equal, these things are equal in Serbia. This depends on several lies, on several explanations. One is strategic and of geopolitical nature. In 2007, Serbia turned neutral, or militarily neutral as they formulated officially, which means, and it has that has been the foreign policy even before this year, that the foreign policy is based on 4 pillars. So the EU, the US, Russia and China. Okay. Official explanation in Serbia is that we are going towards the EU, no question about it, but there is a big question mark about it now. But we don't want to spoil our very good relations with old traditional friends, Russia and China. That cannot last forever, actually, including this unique position of Serbia, at least in Europe and in the Western Balkans, not to impose sanctions on Russia because of Russia's aggression in Ukraine. There has been some success in this balancing policy, which is, and that has to be said, firmly supported by the majority of the population. And that comes actually from a very good memory of the former Yugoslav non-aligned policy. People are not, I would say, informed about that the Cold War was over many decades ago. So they still, and the government also still thinks in terms of the Cold War. I said self-inflicted injury because there is no direct Russian propaganda in Serbian media. All this has been done by mostly tabloids, heavily controlled on daily basis. It's difficult to explain how the level of this control actually. Heavily controlled by Vucic's regime, the president's regime, and they are the ones actually who have been preparing and molding the public opinion for this pro-Russian sentiment.
Okay, so you've given us a historical explanation for why there is so much pro-Russian sentiment in Serbia. But for Serbian elites and Serbian society, what are the most important actual or perceived dimensions of this relationship? I mean, is it primarily political, the way in which Russia has been blocking Kosovo's entry to international organizations? Or is it, for example, energy dependence?
Both, of course.
Okay.
In addition to something I already mentioned, that is the officially proclaimed neutral foreign policy of Serbia, which in the interpretation of the government means that Serbia, the country, should not engage in anybody's wars out of the country. Plus, they claim also, the regime, that Serbia has unfortunately very bad experiences with war, with many kinds of losses of the wars in the 90s in which Serbia participated. And one other thing, the decision not to apply sanctions to Russia also comes from an interpretation from above that sanctions, however they are prepared and targeted, they actually harm innocent population, the society at large, that we have sent on our skins during the 90s. We had sanctions for a decade, the UN, the EU, bilateral sanctions, etc., etc. So these are the reasons. The economic reasons are very important too. Serbia imports all of its gas from Russia, and 60, now probably 50% of oil also from Russia. The diversification of supply is underway, but still Serbia will not be independent of Russian supplies in both areas in the next few years, probably.
Okay, so I think this raises the question, where is all this leading? And in your view, what will be the impact of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and Serbia's response to it on relations of the country with the European Union in the medium term and the long term?
At the moment, the EU practically stopped accession of Serbia to the EU. They're not opening new negotiating chapters, which is a kind of a sanction, actually, although an informal one that the EU has imposed. When it comes to sanctions, the EU's decision has to be practically without any exception. All 27 countries have to be behind that. Hungary is actually protecting Serbia from that, and that is a message for the future. So Hungary, as a very tight ally of the regime in Serbia, will be one member state that will try, in most cases, not to allow a harsher policy of EU towards Serbia. That doesn't mean that it will be always successful, but this, one should have this in mind. And at this point, since because of both EU enlargement fatigue and reform fatigue in the Western Balkans and in Serbia, and terrible results in the areas of democracy and the rule of law in Serbia. Serbia is not a democracy anymore. There is no chance that Serbia might get into the EU in a foreseeable future. So the power holders are playing with that factor, saying yes, we want in, but doing many things against that, including signing just 2 days ago a very hard to understand free trade agreement with China. Can you imagine? It could be, of course, good for the export of Serbian goods there, but in return, if you let China, sell everything without tariffs, where does that lead? I don't really understand this. So they think they have quite a lot of time ahead of them, and they can use it actually whatever they like.
Thank you. That was a very illuminating conversation, and I hope that we will be able to invite you back soon to see how things have developed.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Operational Programme, Human Resources Development, Education and Lifelong Learning, co-financed by Greece and the European Union.